You look at there? Or I look at you, yeah. For the last 25 years, I've worked on a huge variety of movies in various capacities. I've maybe done just about everything there is to do on a visual effects film. I've worked in production. I've worked as a boom operator. I mean, you name it, I've done it. And I've also worked from the producer side as well, so I've seen the issue from both sides. My first film I worked on was Space Jam. And I realize now that's actually a very popular film. At the time, we didn't know if it was going to be. One of the most popular series of films I worked on were the Lord of the Rings series, which was done in New Zealand, and that's where I lived for 3 years. My favorite film I probably worked on that had a lot of meaning in it for me, or at least one of them, would be Flags of Our Fathers, which was directed by Clint Eastwood, which was a World War II film. I know a lot about World War II, and it was something that really spoke to my heart. The stories of those people. I actually drew some heavy comparisons between what they were going through and what I experienced 25 years ago in the front lines of Artsakh. And the most creative film I think I've worked on would be the Lord of the Rings films, definitely. The current debate that's raging right now between the old guard and the new corporate system of making films is really more an argument about art versus commerce. And it's an old argument. I don't think you cannot judge someone just because they're old. I believe that's ageism. Just as you wouldn't say this person doesn't have a right to say anything because she's a woman and a director, or too young and a director. A good opinion is a good opinion, and you can argue it on its own merits. And the fact is that movies exist for a bunch of different reasons. And if somebody's going to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in a film, what they want to do is make sure it comes back and, they can get their just returns. And those are what the Marvel movies are. They're entertainment. Literally, it's a comic book that's been made into a film. It has that same sense of play. It has that same depth and lack of depth. And unfortunately, now there are many pressures that are being put on those films that are not the filmmakers' ideas, but rather the corporate ideas of what is perhaps politically correct, or let's do something just because the politics surrounding Hollywood. I believe it's better to have, and if I agree with the argument that maybe Scorsese and Coppola, people that I admire, people whose films are among my favorite in the world, their issue is, even if you're going to say a certain thing, let the filmmaker say it. That has to be your argument. It can't be someone else's argument. And there has to be a certain amount of depth, because film at the end of the day became what it is because it's an art form, not just because it's some kind of a commercial entity. So really there's going to be a struggle between the two, and you just have to say these exist for different reasons. There's a reason I would say Apocalypse Now is one of my favorite films of all time. Are the Marvel films one of my favorite films of all time? As a group, I would say the genre is one of my favorite genres. But I would never call any one of those films my favorite film of all time. It was a pleasant 2.5 hours that you can forget things and sit and then move on. And there's no reason why films like that can't be made in Armenia as well. We don't have to be heavy all the time. Sometimes we just need a little bit of lightness. The first time I came to Armenia was 1994, and since then I've been here. This is my 6th time in Yerevan, and probably my 4th time in Stepanakert, Artsakh. And the impression I get every time I visit is we are actually a culture that looks to the outside for affirmation and for inspiration, but we're also a culture that can inspire the outside world. And it really is about finding that balance. And it could be similar to someone living in Prague, someone living in Sofia, Bulgaria, or the United Kingdom, or even New Zealand. It's fine to be someone who looks to the outside world and seek adventure, but at the end of the day, I also like the fact that many people now are thinking about how do I create a secure hub for my people, because every culture group and every ethnicity, as it turns out, needs a place to call home. And at the end of the day, regardless of what forces try to pull us apart, This is our home. And I think that one thing I've also realized is, as an Armenian from the outside world, as a what they call a spirkahai, I've noticed we're really good at being guest in someone else's home. We're very good at it. And there's nothing maybe wrong with that, but at the same time, this is actually our home here. The new generation, because of the internet, because of technology, because even of the way we think, we are actually seeking each other out now. We're seeing that the old ways of thinking and the separations probably aren't working. And we're also realizing that we are very smart people, and we're also very grounded people. We have a strong sense of family, but we're also very progressive in many ways, because we have to be. So the combination of tradition and science, of traditional media and scientific storytelling and so forth, and invention, is creating this fusion now. And this is actually one of the crossroads that we've come to as a culture.